history is just a bunch of boring stuff that happened in the past. Nothing that happened over 100 years ago could possibly affect my life today in 2018, right? Wrong. It could have, it does, and it most likely still will. Stuff that happened way in the past still affects us today, and it could shape our future. So if you want to have an effect on your life right now and shape the future, you need to understand what happened in the past. So in order to understand what happened in the past, we have to look at how we get that information. And that's bringing up two lessons today. The first is about something that happened over 100 years ago, and it's still talked about, and the effects we're still feeling up into 2018. And then the other lesson is, how do we get that information? Well, anything that you read, watch, or listen to was created by a person. Books, magazines, newspapers have articles, websites have web creators, web designers, movie and TV shows have directors and producers. And all of those people have opinions, and sometimes those opinions come out in their work. Sometimes people try to be unbiased and they put both sides of the opinion and let you decide. But often they only put out one side, their opinion, and push that out there, and they leave the other side to either be undiscovered or to allow you to discover it from somebody who is an advocate from the other position. The reason I'm bringing that up is in a recent textbook that I reviewed, we discussed Margaret Sanger, and it only had one side of this lady's life. And that's the lesson today is we're going to go over Margaret Sanger. But not just with her, anything that you study, you need to look at all sides of the argument. Take in the left view, the right view, the up view, the down view, put it all together, do your own analysis, be a thinking person, and then make your decision. Not just in this history class, any class, and life. Because as an American citizen, we live in a republic where citizens are expected to make decisions about how we're going to run the country. And if you can't understand the issues of the day, both the negatives and the positives from all points of view, then you're not going to be very good at determining the best way to move forward. So, on to Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger was a lady born in 1879, and this American focused most of her life on women's reproductive rights. She coined the term birth control. In 1910, she started a publication about birth control, and in 1916, she opened up one of the first birth control clinics in New York City. Margaret Sanger lived until 1966, and her life's work was birth control. So a lot of people consider Margaret Sanger as the ultimate pro-choice champion. But not a lot of people know the rest of her life story or how it affects us today in 2018. So there's a few holes in there. Let me fill in on the rest of her life story. I mentioned that she was pro-choice, and the people that love her say she was the ultimate pro-choice woman. Yeah, except she was only pro-choice if it's her choice. If you wanted to go to something different, then take away the choice. For instance, abortion. She believed that people should be able to choose to have an abortion. At times, though, she thought that people should be forced to have an abortion, and also forced to be sterilized against her will. Margaret Sanger was an advocate for eugenics, and part of that advocacy included people having forced sterilization. And her ideas and thoughts and writings came through in the United States, and forced sterilization and eugenics was part of American law. And there were thousands of American citizens who were forced to have a sterilization process against their will. Margaret Sanger was also accused of being a racist. So some of the evidence is that she even mentions in her own autobiography is her dealings with the Ku Klux Klan. Margaret Sanger gave several speeches at Ku Klux Klan rallies and solicited donations from Ku Klux Klan members in order to help her publication and to help monetarily support more birth control / abortion centers. Additionally, Margaret Sanger made several comments, both spoken and written, about the need to control the African American population. In fact, she was one of the head founders of the Negro Project, which worked to reduce the number of African Americans, either through sterilization, forced or voluntary, and through abortions. Planned Parenthood, which is the largest abortion provider in the United States, looks at Margaret Sanger as their founding mother, as the intellectual spark that allows them to operate today. So Planned Parenthood, as I said, was the largest abortion provider in the United States. But let me back up to say that abortions were not always legal. In fact, in 1916, when Margaret Sanger opened her first birth control clinic, abortions were illegal. In fact, birth control was actually illegal at the time. Even contraception. The only type of birth control that was completely legal through all 50 United States was abstinence. Well, the birth control issue and the abortion issue went through our court systems, and it went up through the Supreme Court. In the mid-60s, Supreme Court ruling established that birth control for married couples is legal. Now, this birth control ruling didn't include abortion, but it included contraception. Later, in 1973, Roe versus Wade went through the Supreme Court, and in that court case, abortion was then legal, and that ruling made abortion legal throughout all 50 states. Interesting that abortion was not legal on the basis of women's reproductive rights. They actually cited the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and the due process clause that it provides, and said that abortion is part of privacy rights. Now let's skip forward to 2018. Roe v. Wade became the law of the land. Abortions are legal. In 2018, we have a Supreme Court vacancy for a Supreme Court justice, and one of the biggest questions about whoever fills that seat is, how do they view Roe v. Wade? Will their decisions affect abortion in the United States? Will their decisions affect reproductive rights in the United States? Chances are that that eventually another case will go to the Supreme Court, because in the Roe v. Wade case, it was all about privacy, and they even mentioned in their findings in that case that if scientific evidence could come to a point where we could determine if what was inside the potential mother, was alive, i.e., is the fetus alive, then that could change their decision, because they're only talking about privacy. Well, if that fetus ever becomes a legal human, then you have to balance that person's rights versus the rights of the mother. And a lot of people think that a new Supreme Court may look differently on that than the Supreme Court looked back in 1973. So not only is a Supreme Court justice being questioned about how they will decide if a Roe v. Wade style case comes before them, but also senators are being asked, how will you vote in appointing in confirming a Supreme Court justice? In fact, many senatorial campaigns going on in 2018 are that very question. In fact, it's gotten to the point where some senators are almost being bribed to vote one way or another. Look at a senator in the Northeast, where people saying, hey, if you vote to nominate a certain person that is pro-fetus, pro-life, thinks that the baby is a person in the mother's womb, then we're going to raise over $1 million to go against you. If you vote no, then we will not raise that money. So kind of like saying, hey, we're going to buy your vote. But this kind of thing over abortion rights, over the life of a child, pro-choice versus pro-life, it's going on in the United States in 2018. It's been going on since 1910. So what happened in 1910 still affects us today.